Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Rooted Podcast. Yeah. We have back alive with us Pastor Tyler Gilman. What's up, man?
Man, how we doing? I was not killed off the show.
No. If you didn't listen to last week, I said that Tyler isn't with us, but I meant he wasn't with us in person.
Physically.
But yeah, I guess if you say that, it sounds a little
It's all good.
Yeah,
but we're back.
Hey, how was Disney?
Dude, it was awesome. Disney's one of those trips where it's not a rest trip, but it's a fun trip.
Yeah,
me and my wife we're celebrating our anniversary in December, and that is our hey, we're not going to do anything but go out to eat, and we're just going to chill. So
that's cool.
It was fun. My brother-in-law came down the last couple of days that we were there. He got the experience for the first time, and we had a blast, man.
How many years y'all are going to be celebrating this year?
We will be celebrating 9 years of marriage.
Dude, that's crazy. Yep. That's awesome, man.
Super cool. But yeah, man, we had a blast.
Good.
It was good.
Man, to start things off, I just want to remind people, first of all, to like, subscribe, share, whatever platform you're listening from, and let us know where you're listening from. That would be really cool. In each platform, there's an area where you can actually contact us, message us, and so we want to encourage you to do that. And if you're on YouTube, there's a place to comment, Spotify, a place to comment. But you can also send in questions.
Yeah.
One of the things we love to do is build episodes around your questions, what you want. We don't know what you want to talk about. And then there will be certain episodes where all we do is hit Q&A. And so we'd love for you to do that. Also, in case you are wondering, we did not plan this, but we are dressed alike today. We have the brand new Rooted Podcast merch. That's right. And but we're both also wearing black jeans, so that's
and
pretty
white
funny.
shoes.
And white shoes, yeah. So it's pretty funny. We did not plan that, but
we did get made fun of today by our staff.
But that's great minds think alike.
Yeah,
we're in this season where we're talking about be with your rabbi, be like your rabbi, do what your rabbi did, and so
I wonder if it's. Good times.
Yeah. But listen, if you come to GC at our merch store, you can buy Rooted Podcast merch. We have hats. We have the pocket tees. In the future, we'll have some other things roll out. But, man, I encourage you to support the podcast. If this podcast is helpful to you at all, leave us a message. Leave us a comment. Also, make sure to share it with other people. I think that's what I get blessed by. Are people who will randomly text me or send me a message or say like, hey, man, I shared this with a friend that lives in so-and-so. We have people who listen from all over the country and even different parts of the world. So thank you for your support, but we want to continue to get the Rooted Podcast out there. If you're new to the show, thank you for listening. Here on this show, we just like to say, man, most people address surface level issues. That when we're talking about real issues of our culture, especially when it comes to faith, and then our discipleship to Jesus, that most people address the surface level issues. We want to get to the root. We want to talk about real, deep, hard topics and get to the root of the problem, and then also offer a solution. We talk about, confessing. We talk about confronting, and then we could talk about constructing. And that whole idea is how do we construct disciplines or practices or habits in our life to overcome the issues that we're talking about. So today's episode is actually shaped from a comment sent in to us addressing a question. I thought this is probably important not to address in a random Q&R episode, but we can actually build an entire episode around this. And so this conversation is about our kids. One of the questions that was asked was, if we're trying to teach our children to love everyone, regardless of background, regardless of who they are, and become friends with them, how do you also build healthy barriers when it comes to, I think what we'll talk about is when kids get into elementary age and a little bit older, they start asking questions about like spending the night places, staying over at friends' houses, maybe hanging out consistently with certain friends from school. And then how do you confront when some of these children, because here's what I tell, we've actually talked about this before, that your kids are not your first grader is not going to school with other first graders. They are going to school with 10th and 11th graders. And the reason why is because if they have older siblings or dysfunctional homes or broken homes, they are getting exposed to adult level of information and exposure at first grade that really they're not emotionally or mentally equipped to handle. And so they're repeating words, repeating phrases, repeating behaviors that they're witnessing at home. And so as believers, if you're a follower of Jesus, I think the question kind of centers around this idea of like, how do you teach them to love these other kids, be their friends, but also manage the tension of like, hey, they're asking me to come over the house. They want me to come to birthday parties. They want me to spend the night, and all of my friends are going. And so what's really cool about this conversation is that both of us are in different seasons of life with that. I have two almost grown children. I have I have an adult daughter, a daughter who's in high school, but then I have a son who's 2 years removed, 2 years from being in middle school. So we have walked through this as a family. You are just now starting to encounter this.
Yep.
What grade is Abigail in?
Abigail's in the first grade. She's about to be 7.
Yeah.
Zeke is about to turn 4, and Chandler will be 3 next year. So that's kind of our swing of where our kids are. They're not teenagers, so like I just want to talk more about like where me and Lindsay want to head, like our family formation, which I think is important and something that we talk about often, because we've seen this. We'll use getting invited to birthday parties for example. Yeah. Well, there are some parents out there that it doesn't matter what they do. It's Christmas, birthday party, young, old, like there's alcohol involved. And I'm not saying this this is just where we stand. And so it's like, what do we want our kids to be exposed to at a young age, and think that, well, if you're having a party, this is what this means. Or if you're going or celebrating anything, this is what this means. And so we've actually had to say no to birthday parties for friends, Abigail's friends, because we know what's going to be brought there by adults. And we don't want that to be shaped into her life of celebrating just a birthday party. Now, we haven't had that with Zeke or Chanya because they're still young. And we haven't had the, hey, can I come over and spend the night? Like that hasn't happened yet either, but I know that that's coming. And I know that the things that we put in place now, and I think it's easy to say, well, when my kid gets older, they're not going to do that. But then when it comes in real time, dealing with the real moment of that, it challenged you more, I believe. And I know I haven't been in that situation, but I'm hoping to just put these things in practice now, so when that time does come, I will respond correctly.
Yeah. And you said Abigail's in first grade. I'd love to start with you. Like at what level have you experienced this as a parent right now? Like what is Abigail coming home and maybe asking, or when it comes to hanging out with school friends, where are you guys at with that experience right now?
Yeah, so Abigail, she's our firstborn, so she is like the princess. Our middle son, he's the one we're going to have to watch out for. So all that to say, right now, she hasn't, so far, by the grace of God, she hasn't came home and said something just like, where did you hear that? Not yet, anyway, but we know that's coming. We do. Abigail is such a kind spirit. Like I believe she's a leader, and even her teacher talks about the way that she cares for people is just extraordinary. I mean, she's willing to sit with those who typically don't have a lot of people around them. We just got a report not too long ago just about her character. But I believe those things have been shaped in her by the community that we have here at our church, and us teaching her how to love. And we tell her every single night, like, hey, you are loved by Jesus and loved by your mom and daddy. And she even helps recite, I am fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. So she's taken that to school. And so I think, so again, we haven't had the off the wall. I remember when I was in first grade, I came home to my mom feeling, just really, I didn't know what to do because I heard a very foul word and I've never heard it before. And, but my mom created an environment to where she's like, hey, if it makes you feel bad, just whisper it to me. And we were able to walk through that. So I appreciate the way my parents handled those moments and didn't just, don't say that, like walk through it with me. And so I'm hoping to do that with Abigail when that time comes.
Sure.
Because I know it's coming.
Yeah. I think a couple of things, one, I think people confuse showing the love of Jesus and kindness to community and relationship. Here's actually and here's where I really want to get to the deeper root. The average adults, it was funny. We just had this conversation with a staff member, and they were talking about how they were raised in a very Christian home, and this was their stance, was like, hey, you're only going to spend time with other kids who are like a part of our closest friends. Here was the irony. He said, my parents didn't have any friends.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's like, so really, I grew up playing by myself most of the time.
Me.
And I do think there's such an individualistic culture, and this is the root of the problem. The root of the problem is the average adult doesn't have close community, even the average Christian.
Yeah. They
have surface level community, or they have community that they'll build for a certain amount of weeks, but their kids are not seeing that community firsthand. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the first issues that I think I would address, is that our kids need to know the difference between acquaintances, assignments, people that you feel like, man, these are people that God has called us to actually witness to love on, to spend time with in certain environments, but not in a personal, deeper relationship.
That's good.
And then who are my mentors? And then who is our real close community? That should be built from a place of like, man, we are moving toward the same area. And the problem is because of all the different things that our kids are involved in, most adult relationships are casual. Mm-hmm. It is they're going to go to the teammate's birthday party. Mm-hmm. Or they're going to go to, mostly it is sports related. Yep. And so the problem with that is like, even for our girls, you know, we've had to say no to certain situations where it's like, you're going to have to understand, you don't have the emotional maturity to understand it now. But when we're saying no for you because you don't have the emotional maturity to separate all the things you're about to get exposed to. So I think for us, we made a decision early on. And here's what I would say. So if we're going to talk about actually constructing some healthy stuff, I would say, number one, start with your values. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, again, the root problem is most people don't have their values defined. Yeah. And so define your values. Here's what I know. Me and my wife grew up in two different completely homes. So my wife had but even up until the day before she got married, she had a curfew of 10:30. Like my wife was an adult, but if you lived in her parents' house, this was the structure. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong for anybody. What I'm saying is they had a structure.
There's a standard.
And so they knew where she was at all times. They knew who she was with at all times. And they knew when she was going to be home. And if she was going to be a minute late, she was to text. And she was told, like, hey, leave at a particular amount of time so you can get home safely without driving too fast, all those things. Yeah. Where you have the opposite with me. I was 10 years old roaming the streets. Like, my parents did not care where I was as long as I was home by dark. And so I can remember being 10 years old and just roaming. Like, I lived in a bedroom community outside of Nashville called Hendersonville. And we lived in an apartment complex. Well, this was in the middle of a particular suburb where you could literally just walk. You could walk all the way into downtown, or you could walk into like different neighborhoods. I mean, we would walk miles, especially on the weekends. And it wasn't nothing for me to just pop in the house and be like, hey, I'm going to so-and-so's house. Well, who's so-and-so? Well, they live down there. Okay, cool. Like, there was no other questions asked. There was no other. And so, like, as a 10-year-old, I was getting into stuff. Of course, I was exposed to a lot of adult-level things at a very early age because I grew up around a ton of abuse, a ton of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, sexual abuse, whole nine yards. So my exposure to that world was a lot different than my wife's. So knowing that, though, coming in as a parent, I know, like, not every kid that my son goes to school with or that my daughters go to school with, I have to think through the lens of, like, some of them have grown up in homes like myself.
Right.
And so I have to know first and foremost, what are my values? And so for us, we just said early on, you're not spending the night. There was no spending the night. And if there was, it was somebody who was deeply connected to us in community.
Yeah.
In fact, my girls are almost grown, and I can count one family that wasn't out that was outside of our community that we allowed our daughter to spend the night with. And the only reason why we did is because we had spent enough time with them outside of church, knowing their faith, knowing their standards, that we felt comfortable trusting them.
Yeah, I think there's two questions. The question is, what do you value? And then two, what does those other parents value? And I think if you can't answer that, then that should be the answer for you.
And that is key, because I'll even say this, like, even when it comes to dating, like, just because the other family goes to church doesn't mean they have the same values.
Right.
And we've made that mistake before. We made the assumption that the values were the same, and they were not. I know Christian parents that they don't care what their kids are doing in their bedroom. They don't care that the opposite sex is in their bedroom. They don't keep close tabs on their phone. Like, you can ask both of my daughters, their text messages are read. There is a healthy, and it's like, for people like, oh, you're infringing on their privacy. What privacy?
Yeah.
They aren't adults. They are not privy to privacy as an adult would be. At some point, they'll have the emotional maturity to make a decision as an adult. But my job as their parent right now, I just had this conversation with my son. Like, right now, I am your ultimate authority. That we are responsible to steward you. God is your ultimate authority, but he has entrusted us to be your authority over your emotional, physical, mental development, spiritual development. One day, you're going to be empowered and entrusted for God to be your only authority outside of this home. And so those are things that we take serious, because if we just leave it up to our kids to make those decisions for themselves, they don't have the emotional, mental, or spiritual maturity to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
They're going to make decisions based on their feelings, on their emotions, on their desires. And that is first and foremost. You said it, man. You got to know your values. And whoever they're hanging out with, you need to know what those values are.
Yeah, I was going to ask you too, because I feel like there's probably somebody listening to this right now. It's like that you're overbearing. You're going to suffocate them. You're going to make them. That sounds too much, and they're probably going to end up rebelling because you're too. Like, what would you say to that person to just help encourage them? Like, if this is coming across in that way, because I think you can maybe take it that way, but that is not the heart behind this conversation at all.
Yeah.
So what would you say to encourage that person of maybe that's how they're receiving it, or they're afraid they're going to be over the top with all of this?
No, we just had this conversation as a staff today. Like, vision is tied to language. And so the problem is most people will give rules to their kids with no vision. And so what I would say is, like, do your kids know, like, the vision you have for your family? If you ask my kids today, like, hey, what is our family ID? They would say, you before me. Now, they don't always live that out.
Yeah.
But we don't always live out what God's asked us to do, you know? I think there's a level of, like, some people will institute rules out of fear. And that's when you push your kids to rebellion. We don't institute stuff in our home for fear. We institute it with vision.
That's good.
And when your language is tied to vision, they may not like it in the moment, but later on they'll understand. My oldest daughter, she didn't like half those things. She pushed back on a lot of it.
Yeah.
There was tension. There was little moments of that. Like, our kids aren't perfect. They're just because they're pastors' kids doesn't mean they're perfect, or that they're not going to make mistakes, or they're not going to sin. But I guarantee you, she'll tell you now, as a freshman in college, she is so grateful for the vision we set before.
That's good.
And so that's number one is what I would tell people is not only your values, but, like, there has to be a vision behind the values. The thing we've always told our kids is we want them to love Jesus first, love the local church, love their family, and love people well. If they can become people of love, people of service, you can ask them. I mean, from day one, that's what we have instilled in them, is like, we want you to become people of service, people of love. If you can, if that could become your vision, then the other stuff you may not be happy with every little quote unquote value, standard, or rule, but at least at the end of the day, as you grow and mature, you're becoming who you envisioned yourself to be.
Yeah, that's good.
Because you're making decisions based on your values and your vision, not out of fear, control, or manipulation. Because I think that's, according to, going back to like the conversation we had with a friend of ours, like there are a lot of Christian homes that raise their kids out of manipulation and control. That is not, and we have that conversation regularly with our kids. We tell them, hey, this is not for control or manipulation. This is my 9-year-old. And I'm not afraid to have semi-adult conversations with him. Like there was one day in the van, he'd went on a streak. He had a really bad streak there for a while. He was just super disrespectful to Jess, my wife. And that was just his automatic response, was just to like be a smart aleck, or, always just it's so cool. Like we recently just found out like they're testing him to be for the gifted class. Okay. Because he is his own man. Like he thinks differently. He asks questions. And I love that. But there's also that fleshly side of him that becomes like the rebellious side. He's very wanting to be independent, very, his own man. And so I have to guide that, right? And so there was a conversation one day where like I'm having a conversation with him, and I just looked at him in the eye and I said, son, I said, you are a man of God. I said, and you are a leader. I said, but you have to make a decision what kind of man you're going to be.
That's good. At 9.
And dude, I'm telling you something. He broke. Wow. I mean, broke. And then I'm over here like, I need to hug this guy, And I did. I hugged him. I said, son, I love you.
Yeah.
And I said, what I'm trying to teach you is how to become a comprehensive man, a man who is strong, who works hard, but you are also kind-hearted, you are selfless, and you serve others, especially your mother. I said, because how you treat her today is how you're going to treat your future wife.
Yeah.
And that's stuff that he can't even comprehend. Right. Like whenever I say stuff like that, you can tell the look on his face like, I ain't getting married. You know what I'm saying?
You tell me.
Yeah, but I think it's important. I think most people parent reactionary. When they become teenagers, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, they want to start pulling reins, tying ropes. And the problem is you have already at 7, 8, and 9, they are already forming how they view the world, how they view relationships. And a lot of that comes with how the parents live their life, not what the parents say.
That's so good.
And so that's what we have learned. We learned that the hard way too. Like we're not perfect at it. I want everyone listening to know that. We've had to have our own bumps and bruises, but every time we do, it helps us course correct.
That's good.
Hey, remember what our vision, our values are. This is why we value it. And I've had to like be really authentic with my girls. Guys, every home you go to, I don't care if it looks like the perfect home. I was in places that my parents trusted these other people with me, and I was mistreated. I was abused. I was exposed to things I shouldn't have been exposed to. And so, yes, we want our kids to be kind to everyone. We want our kids to love everyone. That doesn't mean that our kids get to build relationships with everyone.
That's good.
And some of those relationships, I would say the second thing, you have values, vision. I would say the other thing is environment. What controlled environments can you allow your kids to have these moments, right? Like when my daughter goes to a volleyball game and they travel, she has to travel in somebody else's vehicle. But that's still a controlled temporary environment where we can be like, all right, like here's what you might be exposed to, but it's a short period of time and you're with a group of people. You're not left alone with one person or the kid or the parents. And so there are controlled environments like birthday parties. Right. Well, where's the birthday party being held?
Right. Those are the questions to ask.
Yeah. Like what time? Where's it going to be? How many kids are going to be there? Who else got invited? Because there are sometimes it's like, man, I don't know some of these kids, but your friends that we do know and love and parents have also been invited to this thing. And so we can do this. Because most of the time, especially when they're younger, parents go to the parties too.
Right.
And so, for the most part, up until my daughter got into high school, like there wasn't, because the thing is, we've built such deep community that most of the time when they're invited to the party, we are too.
Yeah, man. The whole family.
Yeah, the whole family. Like we're going to come to Zeke's birthday party. We're going to come to our friends' kids' birthday parties. The adults are going to be there together. But we've never just let our kids be by themselves at birthday parties where there's no other like adults that we trust in supervision, especially if it's at an environment that we don't know much about. But that's conversations we're willing to have with our kids, and we tell them, like, listen, we don't want you judging anybody.
Right.
This is not about judgment. This is actually an act of love. That you're loving yourself and them by creating healthy barriers and boundaries.
Yeah.
There's a book by Henry Cloud called Boundaries. If you haven't read that book, I would encourage you to read it, because if we're honest, most parents care more about their kids being cool and popular than they do actually being safe and becoming people of character. And so they're going to want them to be a part of like these things that they're getting invited to. And but then there came a point, like when my daughter turned 17, like right before her junior year, I told her, we had this conversation. I was like, hey, we're going to start letting you make more decisions for yourself. And I said, and every time you're invited to something or something, like, what I want you to remember is ask yourself, like, think through counting the costs of what this is going to look like. What does this mean? When you're going to prom, okay, what does that look like for church Sunday? Like, remember, this is a priority. This is a value. And what I can say proudly is, like, we gave my daughter that choice. She showed up at church.
That's cool.
Every time. And that's the thing, is like when you give them healthy boundaries, but also give opportunities for freedom. Because that's what I tell my kids all the time is this: listen, I want to give you more freedom. How you handle that freedom determines whether or not we bring it back or let you have more. And so the more you can show me that you are mature enough to handle freedom of a decision, then guess what? More trust, more freedom.
Yeah.
But once you've shown that you can't be trusted, we're going to rein it back. We're going to start again. And then we give opportunities to build trust, give opportunities. And some of it too is like my every kid sets the standard for the one after them. And that's what's funny, so like Truett is going to have a completely different experience than his sisters. And he's probably not going to understand that. He's already at that age where he's like, well Maya got to do this. And it's like, I know. And we were really sorry that we let that happen. You know what I mean? And I think parents need to know that's okay.
That's good.
Like, I think some people think, like, when you make parenting decisions, you have to stick with that. And it's like, no, parenting is like any other relational stewardship. It's an ongoing, changing, and being honest with your kids of like, I'm not going to always get this right.
Yeah.
And hold yourself to the same standard you would hold them. Like, we don't put ourselves in a lot of environments. We want to be around environments and people who don't know the Lord or who need Jesus, but we still have a boundary around that. Like, we're not going to participate to a certain extent, or we're only going to go at this level.
Right.
We've been invited to maybe weddings or things, and like, we want to bring our kids. Like, we live in a culture now where it's wild. I can show you like almost a timeline of like when I started doing weddings to like the last 20 years. It shows you how old I am. But like last 20 years, how much it's changed, where most weddings are kid free now. And a lot of it is because they want us, and I'm just being really honest. I'm not trying to like judge anybody out there. That's fine, because sometimes the venue decides that. I understand that. But sometimes the venue and the money, that comes before thinking about, is this a family event? Right. And so for us, like, there've been times where it's like, hey, if you want me to do this wedding, my kids are coming. Yeah. Like, and if we do, like, we also know, hey, there's almost that magical time, right? It's like Cinderella. Yeah. It's like, hey, everybody's about to turn pumpkin on us. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean when I'm talking about it. It's like, all right, it's time to go home. All right, we'll wrap this up. And there's no judgment. Yeah. There's no like, hey, we love you. We want you guys to have fun, but like, my 6-year-old can't be exposed to this right now. And I love it. Just to go back to what you said earlier, it all started with a vision of who you wanted your family to be. That's it.
And sometimes it's even who you want your family not to be.
Yeah.
Hey, we don't want to be a family of this. Okay, so what are some things we can put in to? We have a target.
Yep.
And I think a lot of times we just raise it lives up here. It's not on paper. It's not down of who do we want the Gilman family to be, or the Petty, or who do I want I have one daughter and 2 sons. What type of woman do I want Abigail to be?
Dude.
What type of men, not just boys? We talk about this often. The scripture Luke 2:52. Jesus was 12, growing in wisdom and in stature,
in favor,
all those things. So like, okay, 12 is going to come up pretty quick. Zeke's about to turn, so I'm just like, but who do we want to be? And I would just encourage someone, start there. You said it earlier, and I thought it was so good.
Well, here's what every person listening needs to understand. When you're not in the room and somebody says the Gilman family, there's an immediate reputation.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's, if you're around an environment and you say the so-and-so family, there's an immediate, even if you don't even know that it exists, there is an immediate thought and reputation. And ask yourself, what do I want that reputation to be?
Mm-hmm. And I think, too, be bold enough, if you really want to get serious about this, ask some of the people who will tell you the truth. Hey, what is my reputation?
Mm-hmm.
What does it feel like when my family enters the room? And make sure it's people who's going to be honest with you and not just tell you the things that you want to hear.
Yeah.
So I would encourage that as well.
I would say, too, going back to the original question about, like, if you've got small kids and, like, let's say you invite this other kid over. In fact, the question was posed as, like, this kid maybe has violent behavior or wants to play in a violent way because of what they see or experience. I would say if you don't have a close enough relationship with the parent to be like, hey, is it okay if I course correct? Is it okay if we have conversations about this? If you don't feel comfortable having those conversations, then that's probably not a relationship you want to invest. If you're not willing to invest in it, and if they're not willing to receive it, then that is 100% a good barrier to be like, okay, no more playtime.
Yeah.
And I think we're so afraid to offend. We're so afraid. And it's like, we should be confident, bold in who we are becoming and who we want our kids to become. But also, again, I want to remind people, if the only time your kids have an opportunity to connect and build relationships is in superficial relationships, like if they don't see you having deep community with other people that have kids around their age, then what are we doing? Especially if you call yourself a believer, because we're supposed to be building Christian community outside of Sundays. Yeah. Sundays is the bottom 10% of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. But in the South, it's 100% for most people. And that's why we have shallow Christianity. That's why we have zero community and zero deep relationships and zero deep transformation. Because people think transformation comes by information. That's why everybody is stuck on their phones, because they think with all this technology we're becoming smarter, but with all this technology we're actually becoming dumber.
We were talking about this earlier.
We talked about it earlier, because now you can get everything with one push of a button, blah, blah, blah.
You don't have to think.
You don't have to think. Nobody has to think anymore. And I think to me, that's another part of play. Is like, if the only time your kids get together and they're playing, if it's all electronic and all indoor, that's a problem too. We need to create space for our kids to get outside, have an imagination, to actually have an opportunity to be bored. Yeah. When you're bored, you get creative, and our kids aren't as creative anymore. Mm-hmm. And so we're stuck with the same habits as the adults, and that is playing video games, watching Netflix, watching their favorite shows, watching YouTube, stuck on devices. Yeah. And so we are forming our children to be at that level of spirituality. Mm-hmm. So I think this is deeper than just like, I want my 5-year-old to love and not judge other kids. I think instead of looking at it from that way, it's like, who are we? What is our values and vision? What kind of environment are we creating? Like, even in that, I would encourage people, like, invest money in creating your house to be the place where their friends want to be. Like, let that be the safe place for people to come and be willing to meet other parents and encourage them and let them know, like, hey, in our home, here's what we practice, here's what we do. Your kids are welcome here. I would say this even, you're going to have, and this is something you'll face as your kids get older, you're going to have friends or acquaintances in the church that you attend even that you'll find don't share the same values. And the hard part is, like, I've had to tell my kids, you're going to grow up with some of your friends that are not going to be the same people when they graduate.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's sad. That's heartbreaking. But, like, your best friend won't always be your best friend because they're going to choose different pathways, and they're also raised with different values. Not saying good or bad. That's not a judgmental statement. What it is like, but it is a reminder, like, do you live by your values, or are you reactionary?
Yeah.
And most people are reactionary.
I think sometimes on that, a lot of times people will use, well, they go to church, and it's like, well, just because they go to church does not mean that they
don't
practice,
impress me one bit, man.
Practice the way of Jesus.
Those people come to this church, and I'm like, that don't mean you're a Christian.
But I know growing up, it's like sometimes that was the lens.
Yeah, man.
One thing I loved about my house growing up as a teenager, it's funny now, but in the moment, like, I feel like my parents did a good job of creating that space for my friends.
Yeah, man.
Because far too often I would get, hey, Tyler, can we come over this weekend so we hang out with Rob? I'm like, sure, I guess I'll hang out. But my dad I feel like my dad was a dad to a lot of my friends.
He still is. He's fun to be around, man.
He is. And both my mom, it's so funny, she used to have to buy food for my friends. On like, hey, these are y'all's. Do not eat our entire week worth of groceries. But she would do that, man, and make it feel at home. And so those are some things that I want to help create too, with a safe environment where you can put your feet up here. You don't have to feel like everything's just tense and uptight.
As a parent,
it's safe.
Take off a day of work and go on a field trip with your kids with their school. Like, I know it's hard for some people, but, like, I would reserve some off days for school functions. That way you can be around these kids at these events. Like, we've been to field trips where, like, me and Jess might be responsible for a group of kids wherever we're at. And that's an opportunity for us to, like, show a different type of parenting, how we interact with our kid and how we interact with the other kids. And as they grow in school together, they're going to remember, hey, man, Truett's parents or Maya's parents, Alana's parents, like, one, they're still together. And two, there's just something different about the way they parent, the way they love. And so, yeah, man, it's
fun.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
Super fun.
I think one thing I just want to encourage parents of all ages, you kind of hit on it earlier, just be confident in your no.
Yeah.
Like, if it's a no, like, be confident in it with your kids, and then just explain the why. I think that's sometimes we lack confidence. It's like, well, no, like, hey, if it's a no, it's a no. And then it's okay. And if it's a yes, it's a yes. I
want to remind parents too, like, your kids one day will make their own decisions. And I think it's healthy. There is a healthy level of experiencing rebellion and experiencing tension. Parenting is not supposed to be tension free. That's any relationship. I think most people want tension free in all of their relationships. And that's why they don't have any deep relationships, because tension free relationships are fake relationships.
Yeah.
And most parents don't want to tell their kids what they're really thinking, because they don't want their kids to, most people want their kids to be, there's plenty of time. Like, right now, our oldest daughter is like our best friend. Because, I'm still her dad, but I'm in a different season of life in our relationship together.
That's good.
Because she's making her own, she's an adult. And so I want parents to know, like, you may have to walk through 3 years of, like, living hell to get to the heaven that you want.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, because if you do it the right way, with the right why, and you're not trying to control, manipulate, or keep them from being exposed to this world, then they will learn how to live in this world the right way, with an idea of vision, values. How do I create the right environments? I'll kind of finish with this. I told my girls once they went from 5th grade to 6th grade, I said, these next 7 years of your life are going to be shaped by 2 things. 1, who your friends are. 2, what your focus is. And so if you have the right people around you that are making healthy decisions too, and y'all are challenging and keep each other accountable, like, man, my daughter right now, Maya, she has incredible friends around here. They all come to youth together. They're in small group together. They have their own D group on the side. They go to each other's ball game. It was cool. Gracie was at Maya's game last night. We're all as a family going to Gracie. She's a cheerleader. Awesome. We're going to her game tonight. And the other thing is like what your focus is. If you start focusing on like all the other girls are going to be focusing on boyfriends or in who they're dating or who they're texting or what social media. If you do all that, guess what? High school, middle school will be a living hell.
Yeah.
And you'll be an emotional wreck and you won't grow up. We treat, I know adults that are in their 40s and those 4 small years of their window of life was the best years of their life. And they can't quit talking about it.
The good old days is what it's referred to.
But now they're living in just depression, anxiety, dysfunction, because they thought this was the pinnacle. I tell my kids, like, this is small.
Yeah.
There's more people out there. Like, I try to tell my oldest daughter, like, why are you so worried about trying to, like, I almost prefer she don't find somebody from here. You know what I mean? Go find somebody. Like, because there's so many people who just don't have the same values. They don't have the emotional, mental, spiritual maturity and health to like. And so it's like, man, I wanted her to go somewhere else and get exposed to a whole new world so that she could see like, man, I don't have to live my life in this little box.
Good.
So, man, this has been a great episode.
Yeah, good stuff.
Want to encourage people again, like, subscribe, share, whatever platform, send us some questions, comments. Let us know what you think about the episode. Again, I'm not a perfect parent. You know, I'm in a weird season where I have an adult, an approaching adult, and then I still have a kid who wants to like jump on a trampoline and throw football and play Legos.
That's
like
awesome.
It's pretty fun. I get to live in all these different phases. I still get to be a little kid, and it's awesome. And I also get to be a best friend to my adult daughter.
That's so good.
So, man, whatever it is that you guys choose or how you choose, I'm praying for you. I pray that you would just, again, vision, values, environment, just do it, man. Yeah. So remember, if you want the fruit,
you got to get to the root.
Peace.
See y'all.